Welcome, everybody. This is Dan Hermrich. I'm the Director of Certification and Accreditation for the National Alliance of Direct Support Professionals. And with me is John Raphael. He's our Director of Educational Services. This is the first in a series of new Lunch and Learn webinars that we're going to put together. They'll be about a half hour long each, and we're going to be primarily focusing on competency and the NADSP competencies for direct support professionals. And this is the first where we sort of just talk about what is competency. So there we are. There's John and myself.
Hello, everybody.
In touch with us.
With our our pictures, which hopefully will look pretty competent, but
Yeah,
I don't know.
I hope so.
Dan, you look a little more competent than I do. I have to
know.
admit.
I
We
did the
both.
jacket tie.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. But we both have glasses, and that's good. Um, but okay. Hello, everybody. We're gonna have, I think, a really good time this afternoon or this morning, wherever you're at. Again, like Dan said, these are the first in a series we're going to be doing to feature what we know as something that's very important for direct support professionals to understand, which is competency. So that said, Dan, there it is.
There it is. This is our
Visionary.
mission and vision statements. And we're working our way toward that world with a highly qualified and professional direct support workforce. And we know if you look down at that mission statement, we know to have that highly qualified workforce, we need knowledge, skills, and values. And when we talk about competency, we're really focused on the skills portion of that equation.
Yep, exactly. And I think starting right out the gate here, Dan, um, I think we know at the NADSP some of the struggles that I guess the identification that direct support professionals have in our society is that they're not necessarily understood as being professionals. They're these kind of entry level quote unquote workers, which is you can't get really much farther from a truth than that, um, because the reality is the skills and obviously what we're going to talk about today, competencies that direct support professionals possess, literally change lives. And there it is. When you look at um, our catchphrase, kind of our slogan, making a world of difference in people's lives, that doesn't just happen magically. It happens, I think, with a when all of the things that are listed in our vision and our mission are brought to, are brought to life. So um, there's the Venn diagram
Right.
that
There's the visual illustration that we have to have all three. We need knowledge. There's a great deal of knowledge that direct support professionals need to have. There's knowledge that's common to the field. There's also a lot of person-centered knowledge about the individual people the DSP is supporting. There's history there. There's likes and dislikes,
Mhm,
interests, goals that DSPs have to be aware of.
exactly. And
Values, of course, come from our NADSP Code of Ethics, and we could certainly go on and on about that, but we're gonna focus on the skills today.
just
Uh, the skills are the actual, on the job behaviors. They're the things that direct support professionals are able to do on the job, able to do effectively, and actually put the knowledge and the values into practice.
hmm hmm And I think one thing about skills or competencies also, Dan, is that they, like you said, they're behaviors which can be observed. You can watch skill in action, and anybody that's seen any person do anything with any kind of talent or skill, it's you can see it, you can watch it, you can evaluate it, and that's a large part of why competency-based learning and competency-based evaluation is important for direct support. And I think we're going to really get into that deeper in the next few minutes. This is a quote that probably everybody that's on this webinar, this Lunch and Learn webinar, that has spent any time with us, if you've never been with the NADSP in any way, shape, or form, then welcome. But if you've ever been with us, whether it's at a training or getting an email from one of us, this quote is a constant, and it's from the ideological founder of the NADSP, John F. Kennedy Jr., and it says it all. Is really at the end of the day, any day where direct support professionals are engaged in their practice, that we're going to define a good quality day at the point of interaction between that staff member and the individual you're supporting that has a disability. And it doesn't get much simpler or clearer than that, right, Dan?
Yeah, and I think, we have all these systems in our field that do their best to measure quality. It's tough to measure quality at the point of interaction.
Mm-hmm.
And so often what happens is, people come in and evaluate record keeping. They evaluate the environment. But where quality really happens is at the point of interaction.
Yeah. And I think, again, quality, when we teach this, because we in training and when we're teaching about anything that the NADSP teaches, we always talk about quality and how quality is and can be kind of subjective. And really is subjective, based quality is in the eye of the beholder, right?
Yeah.
Because what's good quality to you, Dan, might not be to me, and vice versa. But for what we do and for what professionals do, that point of interaction, man, it can be good, it can be bad. Wonderful things can happen, which we're going to talk about. Incredible things can happen, right? With competent, skilled, ethical direct support professionals doing what they do best. But also, we also know that bad stuff happens, neglect and abuse and terrible things, which that fortunately is not as frequent, but it does happen. And if anything bad should happen, it's a case. One case is bad too much, is bad, is bad enough. But the reality is, this measure of quality, I think the metrics that we're talking about, how to measure it, are based on our competencies.
Right.
I think that's what our conversation's about today. So let's get to it. So I don't know. I found this really cool little visual that's at the bottom left hand of the screen. That you can all see. I mean, we're going to put up the definition of what competence is as per Webster's dictionary. But take a look at that visual. What do you think of that visual, Dan? I kind of like it.
I do,
Because, because look what's at the center of all those peripheral ideas and things.
yeah.
There's a little bit of the Venn diagram kind of vibe into it, but
Yeah.
I think ultimately, competence is something that's fairly simple to define. And here's what the Webster's dictionary says. Doing something successfully or efficiently.
That's
Okay.
it.
Okay, we're done.
Yeah.
We're
And
done.
that's what direct support professionals do, right?
Yeah.
I've done trainings for DSPs for many years, and I know that there's a disconnect sometimes between how successful a DSP might be in a training, taking a multiple choice test, and how successful they might be on the job. The stuff in the classroom's about knowledge, and that's absolutely vital. But when you put a DSP on the job, working directly with a person, uh, people that have skills, those skills come out, and that quality happens.
Mm-hmm. And just piggybacking on that a little bit, Dan, I'm thinking about, that direct support professional in whatever the venue is or whatever the situation is that they're doing their work, um, that there's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of direct support professionals have lots of influence around them, whether it's working with multiple people, maybe in some kind of congregate setting. Maybe you work in a group home where there's not only, maybe 5, 6, maybe sometimes 12, sometimes more people that you're responsible for supporting, your fellow staff, right?
Hmm.
Supervisors, maybe family members, uh, state surveyor people coming every so often to check out to make sure things are going well. There's so many influences and so many also like distractions. um, it's, to do something successful or efficient, that's challenging, that's tricky. And I'm always amazed when I go into any kind of setting, or when I was working in direct support myself, that it, it's, you don't do it in a vacuum.
Right.
There's just so many things that can interfere with doing something well. um, and I think when we talk a little bit later about understanding what you're doing based on it being something intentional, can
Right.
help you with all that influence, that outside influence, that noise that comes. You know, the fact is, and here's like an example, right, Dan? So you're working in a situation, maybe you're working in a group home setting, and maybe you're supporting people that have real strong personalities and dynamic, dynamic ways that they express themselves, and maybe, sometimes people can get aggressive and maybe a little violent. And instead of, seeing a situation as, oh my gosh, it's getting out of hand, and chaos is ensuing, and people could get hurt and whatever, instead of that, seeing that situation as a situation where you, as the professional, are engaged in crisis prevention or
Mhm.
crisis intervention. It's something, it sounds, oh, like it's, what difference does it make? It makes, I think, an incredible difference for that professional identity, that you're involved in something in that moment, that you're probably used to, if you've done it for years, and maybe you haven't done it, and you weren't measured on how well you intervene with that crisis or prevent that crisis. That's a big difference than just being in a situation where you're working with a lot of dynamic personalities, and maybe you're dealing with a lot of behavioral stuff. That's a big difference. And
Yeah,
just,
and I
you know,
think it's common for people to look at that when it's done well and act like it's just sort of magic, right? That, oh, this DSP, just something about them. They're just that they have a calming influence. They're just so good with the guys. But really, what you're seeing there is the application of skill,
yeah, yeah,
the assessment as to those early warning signs that all DSPs know about. That if I'm seeing this, I need to focus a little more
right.
because things are going to escalate from here if I don't intervene.
That's it. That's it. And what you just said, seeing things that I know are going to turn into an escalation, that's a competency. That's a skill called assessment.
That's,
And that said, let's go. Here
yeah.
we go. Um, there's the list. Um, this is a lunch and learn event, and I think if you learn anything today, anybody that's listening, if you're listening to Dan and me, and um, these 15 competency areas are really the foundation of anything and everything that the National Alliance for Direct Support Professionals really wants to give and contribute to the direct support professional community. And those of you that know us and know our material and are involved in any of our certification or credentialing programs, this is our foundation. And just take a look at them. They're on the screen there. And we ask people often, when we're teaching these competencies, to kind of just look at them and see them in as when you look at them initially, all like, my gosh, these are 15 areas that we got to do and we got to know as DSPs, and we got to be, wow, this is overwhelming. My gosh, we have to do all this stuff. Well, this okay. Look at it like this. So you've heard this, right? Yeah, seeing the forest for the trees, right? This, when you look at it as a forest, it's a little daunting. It's a little scary. Oh my gosh, wow, that's a lot of stuff that I got to do as a DSP. Looking at each area, each of those 15 areas, when you kind of just take a look at one, you got it. DSPs are doing these things. Oftentimes, they're doing them simultaneously.
Yes.
And oftentimes, direct support professionals don't realize how skilled and competent they are at any given moment. So let's go back to the crisis intervention and prevention, or crisis prevention and interventions example, right? So if you take a look at area 10, so let's think of a situation. I don't know. Think of a situation, Dan, where there's a possible crisis. Let's say.
Well, do you want to
All right.
talk about your store in the community example?
Yeah, there you go. There you go. There you go. So there was a person that I supported many years ago, and a bunch of other people supported her too. And she is a person that had a dual diagnosis. And dual diagnosis meaning she had not only an intellectual disability as what she needed support with, but she also had a mental illness, and a mental illness called schizophrenia. And she would have delusions and hallucinations and all kinds of very, very disturbing stuff for her. And so one of the things she would do, unfortunately, she would threaten um, she would threaten the local a local store, and she would threaten to blow it up. And she was pretty competent, and she would sometimes get on the phone and call in bomb threats to this particular store, and it wasn't good. She got into trouble with the law, and lots of crisis situations that we had to intervene with. And over the course of time, me and several other people, we would area 12. We documented all these times when she would be uh, upset with this particular store. We didn't know why she was upset with this store, but she was upset with this particular store and she wanted to blow it up. That's basically the thing. And so, area 3, assessment. Over the course of some months, we started to understand and get a sense of when she was about to get involved in these very uh, dangerous situations with, threatening violence, and we would intervene. We would be able to know her, and many of you that are probably listening that have taken any, crisis intervention courses, her antecedent behavior. And that's assessment, by the way. To understand antecedents, it means that direct support professionals are competent in assessment. And so through our assessment and through area 2, communication with her, because when she was in a psychotic state, you had to communicate with her very carefully. You had to communicate with her in a gentle way, in a way that wasn't threatening. And we were assisted by psychologists and by her psychiatrist to uh, be able to talk to her in a way that wouldn't be threatening. Over the course of time, a very long story kind of made short here, we were able to intervene and prevent crisis over the course of about a year, um, through ongoing documentation that helped us understand her antecedent behavior, which was ultimately being skilled at assessment. And ultimately, we were able to support her health and wellness in a kind of a person-centered way. And if you're following me here, you're probably kind of connecting the dots to all these competency areas that our work with this woman over the course of about a year, we're able to prevent her from threatening the store anymore, which helped her life out in terms of her quality of life. She wasn't getting in trouble by the police, and she was a little bit more respected as obviously a community member. So that story, Dan, I think is one that it's just one of infinite stories that are out
Right.
there that DSPs do.
And you and I, when we go out to do training, will often ask the people in the room, for their best stories,
Yeah.
their stories of when a direct support professional really made a difference in someone's life.
Oh, yeah.
And you can't hear those stories without seeing these competency areas, without seeing these skills.
hmm You're absolutely right, Dan. And I would challenge everybody listening, or watching, or whatever you're doing, whoever's lunching and learning with us today, think of a story where a really good outcome happened with a person that you support. Something really, really powerful and positive happened. Not the bad stuff. There's enough of that. But the real good stuff. And you can absolutely guaranteed. I would bet all the money I have, which is not a lot, but I would bet that you can think of a story, and when you really think of what you did as a direct support professional with that person to get to that good story's outcome, you can connect it to many of these competency areas. I can't. I can guarantee it. Dan has seen it. I've seen it. When we do that, what Dan was saying, the competency connection exercise. Um, so there's the NADSP competencies. Now, Dan, you might want to talk about these and a little bit about the eBadge Academy that the NADSP has just launched.
So yeah, we have just launched our brand new eBadge Academy, in which DSPs can earn electronic badges for the skills that they demonstrate on the job. And we went in a slightly different direction with the eBadge Academy. Rather than use our own 15 NADSP competency areas, which are so important to us, we used instead the CMS core competency areas. Now these are from CMS, the Centers for Medicaid and Medicare Services. That's the branch of the federal government that funds really almost all direct support services in this country. And so these have a couple of advantages. Because they come from CMS, they have that authority of the federal government behind them. They also were written a little differently than ours. They were written in a way that they're designed to be cross-sector, meaning they should apply just as well to any type of human services. So not just services for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, but services to people with traumatic brain injuries, services to people who are aging, services to youth, that the same competencies could be applied across all of human services.
Right. And I think when we go back to the NADSP competency areas, right? There's a lot of, I guess, connection, a lot of crossover. Whether that's by accident or not doesn't really matter. What matters is that both of these sets of competencies, DSPs they're doing, they're doing. And I guess where I get I get frustrated when I talk to direct support professionals. I don't think they 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 don't give themselves enough credit.
Right.
And I think this is a way, and this is what we have been pushing for many, many years. This is a way to help direct support professionals understand how competent they are. Because when you look at these, you can't deny that this is what DSPs do. And I think by nature of the way we train direct support professionals, even by our regulations and what is regulated to teach direct support professionals, um, there's little in the area of competency-based learning
Right.
that's out there. And that's our push. And I think, I don't know if you want to talk about the eBadge Academy or about credentialing a little bit, Dan, for a couple minutes, because I think that's our method. What we're hoping that we can help change our system to help DSPs get credit for competency. So I don't know if you want to talk about that at all. Yeah.
Yeah, so each of these competency areas, whether you're using the CMS competencies, whether you're using the NADSP competencies, they all come with these little bullet points that we call skill statements. And those skill statements are objective, measurable behaviors that DSPs use in the workplace. There we go. There's some skill statements.
There you go.
And what we've done in the eBadge Academy is kind of turn each of those skill statements into an electronic badge that you can earn. And they all have nice short little names like advocate with or informed advocate in the case of empowerment and advocacy. And we give you some writing prompts or some speaking prompts if you prefer to do things in a recorded way. To just have DSPs tell those stories of those great outcomes, just like we do when we travel around and train, and make the connection between the story and the skill statement that we're asking for. So really what we're asking DSPs to do is explain to us how do they demonstrate this skill in their work with the people that they support. Because we know that there's a lot of variation in direct support. I mean, as universal as the competencies are, there's an infinite number of ways they could be demonstrated. So rather than tell people this is how you demonstrate this skill, we ask. We say, tell us what this looks like in your world. Tell us how you have demonstrated this skill in your work. And we get those what we call testimonials electronically. We review them, and if they line up with our expectations for that badge, then we award a badge to that DSP. And eventually, you can accumulate these badges and use them to earn a certification, the same certification levels that we've offered in the past through our traditional portfolio-based certification program.
You know what I'm going to do, Dan? I'm just going to quickly just show people a little bit of the badges. There's the badges, some of them, And there they are. These are all little pieces of competency, because that's what this Lunch and Learn's about, is what is competency. Well, this is what, at least at the NADSP, what we are going to use as a measure of direct support competency for
And
direct support
John, if you
professionals.
want to hover over any random badge,
Sure.
it will show the skill statement that's associated with it.
Let's do a fun one. Oh, hold on here. Here, cultural reflection.
All right, that's skill statement 11C. The DSP recognizes their own biases and doesn't let them interfere in work relationships.
Cool. So I'm thinking, let's see, maybe I'm a Presbyterian, and I'm a Presbyterian, and I'm a Christian person, and suddenly a person comes to my organization for support who is a Muslim, and I don't know much about Islam. I don't know much about the religion. But I'm not going to interfere with that person's religion based on what I practice. Would that be something that would propel me to understand things around this competency area?
Yeah, I think that would be a good start. You'd probably be recognizing the differences in your beliefs,
Mhm.
you'd be probably need to learn a little bit more about how to best support this person, because, for example, there could be dietary restrictions
Mhm.
uh, that come along with his religious beliefs, and certainly, if you're supporting him, you'll want to be aware of that. You'll want to take those into account to be truly person-centered.
Right, right. And I think the list goes on in terms of you can probably get I think those that are watching and listening can get a sense of what this is about. Um, so wanted to just give you just a quick show of the eBadge Academy. Um, One other thing before we end, when it comes to competencies, we are working more and more as an organization, the NADSP. We are working more and more in the development of frontline supervisors of direct support professionals. And that said, they have a different set of competencies. And frontline supervisors or managers or leaders in organizations that employ direct support professionals, they're not direct support professionals. They often have been direct support professionals, and often very good ones at that. And it doesn't mean that they aren't they don't do direct support anymore, but their role is not direct support. And that said, when you look at this list of competencies that were developed by the University of Minnesota back in 2013 and given to us, given to the community, um, there's 11 competency areas that comprise what frontline supervisors need to do in their role as supervisors and leaders of direct support professionals. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time, going through each one of these or anything like that. But we did want to give you guys today a sense of what is competency, and it's not as complicated as you might think. Hopefully, I think we've tried to show that today, and show you and break down what competency means, at least to us, for direct support professionals. Um, but that said, we're just thrilled that you have joined us. It looks like we have a question here, Dan. Hold
Oh,
on.
okay.
All right, hold on here, because we're about to wrap up. And let's see, is there a question? Is there a question? It says there is, but hold on. I'm not that competent when it comes to using this machine. Hold on, here we go. Here we go. Somebody is giving us a story. Um, Literally just went through the cultural reflection example to a T. The person was a Muslim, and we supported him with that, with dietary things and whatnot. Hashtag go competencies. All right. Cool, cool, cool. That's great. That's great. And I think ultimately, I think everybody that takes a little bit of time, looks through our competency set, the CMS competencies, they're going to be able to make the connection that what they do is skilled and complex, but ultimately of great value to people with disabilities in our society. So with that, Dan, anything else?
Yeah. No, I think that wraps it up very well. Thanks, John, and thanks
Thank
everyone for tuning in.
Yep, yep. Thank you, Dan, for hosting. And if you want to reach us, there's our information. And I guess look to our advertisements and announcements for the next Lunch and Learn, which is coming down the pike a little bit. But until then, we'll see you. We'll see you down the road.
All right. Bye.
Bye bye.